Hello and a warm welcome to all of you. Hope all of you are doing well. The journey of life, the one we are right now on, isn't so different from the hypothetical journey, except rather than spending time with other people or person, our constant companion is the voice inside our heads. But for many of us, the relationship between ourselves and that voice isn't so positive. Self criticism is a common problem and not one to be overlooked. The way you talk to yourself plays a vital role in well being. Joining us today from UK, Dr. Sarah Eager is retired consultant psychiatrist in London, a practitioner, sorry about that, a practitioner of Raj Yoga meditation for over 40 years and a certified mindful self-compassion teacher. I like to address her as Sister Sarah because that's exactly how she has made me feel whilst conversing and getting to know her. So, Sister Sarah will not only help you increase the compassion and kindness you show yourself, but will also give you the tools to help your clients, students, family members, employees show more compassion to themselves. So, let us all together welcome her. Good morning.
Good morning, Javin.
Warm welcome once again.
It's lovely to be with you. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here. But I guess it's more late afternoon, evening where you are.
Yes, it's 4 in the evening for us here in Jakarta. So over to you now, sister.
Okay. Well, thank you all for inviting me and welcoming me to your session, your Saturday session. And what we're going to talk about today is about self-compassion. But before that, I'd like to get us going by thinking about what compassion is itself. I'm just going to share my screen with you because I have a few slides for this presentation, if that's okay. So what I'd like to do is begin by asking you just to think about for yourself, what does compassion mean to you? What does compassion mean to you? So just reflect for a moment. And if we were doing this as a workshop or we had a bit more time, I might ask you to put your thoughts in the chat or for us to share a bit. But I think today I'm just going to keep talking. So the word compassion from the Latin actually means to suffer with. Com is with, and passion in this sense is to suffer. And so it's always in the context of some pain and suffering that we talk about compassion. And these are two very nice quotes. The wish that all sentient beings may be free from suffering. So the Dalai Lama has said that. And Paul Gilbert, who is a well-known psychologist from the UK, has said it's the deep awareness of suffering of oneself and others, coupled with the wish and effort to alleviate it. So this is something that's really important because it's not just empathy. It's not just, oh, I can see your pain, I can feel your pain. It's that I want to do something about it. And that's what makes compassion very activating kind of energy. And it's not just that I feel compassion for others, I can also have compassion for myself. So it's very important, these aspects of this definition. And Daddy Janki, who was one of the administrative heads of the Brahma Kumaris before she passed on last year, and she was the president of the charity, the foundation of which I'm chair, the Janki Foundation, and we support the Global Hospital in India. She made a very nice comment about compassion. It's not wanting sorrow to remain in the other, but having the strength in the self to remove that sorrow. And so that again is another aspect of compassion, isn't it? It isn't that we just come down and feel sad and are in the same position as the person who's suffering in some way. We must have some inner strength ourselves in order to lift the other person up to this, out of their sorrow, to give them peace, to give them happiness. And Daddy Janki herself was a really good example of someone who would do this. You might go to see her worried about this, worried about that, something that was on your mind. You'd talk to her and you'd notice that just your burden was lifting. And when you left the room and you finished seeing her, you came out and you realized you felt much lighter. Something had happened in that interaction. And I think that something was her own spiritual strength was able to take away the pain and suffering of others. So she was a very good example of compassion. And a very nice saying from Myanmar, and we remember all the people there at the moment for what they're going through. But this is a lovely quote: when the sunshine of loving kindness meets the tears of suffering, the rainbow of compassion arises. So this saying really reminds us that it's that energy of loving kindness, which we know we all have, when it meets suffering, then this feeling of compassion arises. So it's always in the context of suffering that compassion is relevant. And it's important to see what are the different aspects or components of compassion, because we will be applying these to ourselves as well. So the first thing is attending. So for compassion to arise, we first have to notice that suffering is present, and that suffering might be in ourselves or in someone else, but it's just noticing, paying attention. The second component is understanding. So we begin to think, what's causing this? Because if we understand what's underneath the distress, then we're going to be able to think through what a solution or an appropriate action might be. So we need to understand it. Empathizing. So empathy is really that felt response where I'm resonating with your feelings, where I'm picking up what you're going through, where I'm able to walk a mile in your shoes or just have some sense of what it is you're going through. And so we don't want to be just completely soaked in empathy, because that wouldn't really be helpful to help someone else come out. But we need to touch it a little bit so that we can really have that empathic connection, that understanding of what someone's going through. And then helping. So, okay, we've noticed someone suffering. We're beginning to see what might be underneath that. We feel it ourselves. We have empathy, and then we act. Then we do something. And it's appropriate action. And this is important to understand. It's not like rescuing. It's not like doing what I think is best for you necessarily. It's really understanding what that person feels they need to support them. And this is quite a deep subject, because sometimes we might think we know what's best for others. And that's why it does need wisdom. And sometimes it needs courage as well. And when you look in the dictionary for other words for compassion, all these beautiful words come up. So the words of brotherly love and tenderness and warm-heartedness, benevolence, charity, tolerance, consideration, humanity. So all these words are really giving us a feeling for the energy of compassion. Do you see what it is? It's really like, you're my brother, you're my fellow human being, I can see you're in pain and I really want to do something to help you. So compassion is an activating energy. It's something that is moving. It's something that is wanting to support, wanting to help with love. There's that feeling of love inside of it. So we can see what it's like when someone else is suffering. And what I'd like to do now is take you on a little visualization exercise where we think about how do we respond when someone's suffering, and notice what's going on when we're responding, and then think about when I'm suffering. So I'm just going to invite you to take a comfortable position. This is like a little meditation, if you like. And you might want to have your eyes closed or half open. Sometimes with the visualization, it's easier if you close your eyes. And just take a few deep breaths. And let your shoulders drop. Let your arms relax. Just tuning into your own breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. And now I would like you to bring to mind a time when you've had a close friend or a loved one who was suffering in some way. They may have had a misfortune or failed or felt inadequate. Something bad might have happened to them, or they may have made a mistake. Just remember this time when you were with your friend or your loved one and they were distressed or upset. And just notice how you were feeling. And what did you do? What was your body language like? What words did you use? What was your tone of voice? Did you do anything? How did you respond to them? So a friend of yours or a loved one is suffering in some way and you're with them, you're remembering this occasion. So how did you respond to them? What was your body language, your words, your tone of voice, and how are you feeling? Now I'd like you just to put that memory aside. And now I'd like you to bring to mind a time when you were suffering in some way. You may have had a misfortune or failed, might have been unwell or made a mistake. If something bad has happened, and just notice how you respond to yourself. How is your body language? How's your body feeling? What tone of voice do you use with yourself? And what kind of words do you say to yourself? Are there any actions that you take? So you're suffering in some way, you're going through a tough time, something unfortunate's happened. How do you respond to yourself? What is your tone of voice, your language? How's your body feeling? What actions do you take? And now I'd like you just to take another deep breath and come back from that little exercise, and in your own mind, compare the two experiences. How were you when you were with a friend or a loved one? And how were you with yourself? Just see if you notice any difference. I can't see the chat here. I don't know, Jabeen, if you can, but if anyone wants to tell us if you noticed a difference, maybe Jabeen can tell me.
Yeah, we don't have any messages as yet, but I can start sharing what I felt just now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think what I felt was I was kinder when I was thinking about somebody else or being compassionate towards somebody else. And when it came to myself, I think I was very hard on myself.
Mm, mm. That's a
And
very common experience, Jabeen. Very common.
yeah, and we have a message here saying yes, more loving and caring for others. So yeah.
Yes, I think that's something that they've done quite a lot of research on, in fact, and have noticed that, you know, um, when we have others in front of us who are suffering, somehow it's easier for that part of ourselves to emerge, that compassionate self to come out. But when we're suffering, that's when often our inner critic or a more harsh voice comes into play. And there are lots and lots of reasons for that. So this is what we notice, you know, if it's a friend, or we can respond to others' suffering. So we know we have that capacity inside. I don't know about in Asia, but in some countries, black cats are considered lucky, and in some countries, black cats are considered unlucky. But here we're saying if it was the country where a black cat was unlucky, then we're saying, no, no, you're not bad luck. It's okay. So
Um,
we're all,
sorry to cut you. We have
yes,
a few messages that have come in. Would you like me to? Is it a good
yeah,
time for me to read it?
okay,
I didn't feel much difference in the terms of my stage in both cases. This is one. And the next one is earlier, I wasn't compassionate about myself, but after I started to meditate, I have developed more compassion for myself.
good, good. Okay, yes. Well, the research has shown that about 80% of people notice that they're kinder to others than they are to themselves. About 18% say they notice they're the same, they're as kind to others as they are to themselves. And only about 2% say they're actually kinder to themselves than to others. So I think this feeling of that I'm able to give kindness to others, but when it comes to me, somehow these kind of often negative thoughts arise, like don't be weak, pull yourself together, don't be pathetic. Um, so we do have often these negative voices in our head, and this can be due to lots of things, our culture, the voices that the messages we got from our parents when we were young were sometimes quite critical. Different aspects are going to make us a little more harsh on ourselves than we are to others. So it's rather than thinking, oh, I'm terrible to myself, and as someone said, by practicing meditation, you learn to be kinder to yourself as well. But I think for me, when I really started practicing self-compassion practices very intentionally, that also made a big difference to how kind I was to myself, and to notice these kind of voices that often they're just there in the background and we're not even aware of how we're speaking to ourselves. So it's quite interesting to observe these differences between myself and others. So what are we going to do about it? Well, when we talk about developing compassion, or being, the world is saying we need more compassion in the world. Lots of people are suffering for many, many reasons. Obviously, COVID is a really big one at the moment. The climate change has got people very worried, social inequalities, health issues, so many reasons why we need to have compassion in the world. And the Dalai Lama reminds us that it's not selfish to develop that compassion for yourself, because that is the basis on which you also feel compassion for others. So, this ability to look within and see what I'm going through really puts us in a much better position to connect with others when they're suffering. So, caring for others really requires caring for ourselves. So, Kristen Neff, who is a psychologist in America, in Austin, Texas, has done a lot of work on self-compassion. That's been her life's work, and developed a program called the Mindful Self-Compassion Program. And her definition of self-compassion is quite simple, really. It's just responding to yourself with the same care and kindness that you would to a good friend. So it's like becoming your own best friend. When you're having a difficult time, or you notice something you don't like about yourself, learning how to respond to that with a loving, kind energy rather than a critical one. And there are very good reasons that this is much more healthy and constructive. And I'll explain those as we go along. And she talks about what are the three major components of self-compassion. And the first one is this noticing aspect. We talked about compassion and the components. That first one, attending, noticing. This could be called mindfulness or meditation. It's that balanced awareness. It's that ability to go within and to be able to be a little bit of a detached observer of my own thoughts and feelings. So, this practice of meditation and mindfulness just creates a bit of space where I can feel that I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings. I can witness them. And that spaciousness allows us to be a little bit more discerning. We can start understanding more what we're feeling, we can give it a name, and all that helps us manage our emotions and feelings better. And also means that because we've noticed, then we can apply the remedy. Then we can say, oh, I'm suffering now. I need to give myself kindness. And so that becomes more the automatic response. And there's a lovely little saying here, you've got to feel it to heal it. Very nice. So we need to notice, we need to attend, because then we know what's the right remedy to bring to that suffering. And the second component is common humanity. And it's very interesting. When we're suffering, we often feel, oh, I'm the only one who's going through this. We can feel very lonely, very isolated. And the fact is that we all suffer. Just living brings suffering from time to time. Everyone will have good days and bad days. They'll have illnesses, they'll have challenges. And so actually it's our suffering that connects us. So rather than making us feel uniquely isolated, we need to remember that when I'm suffering, other people are also going through the same thing and the same feelings. And then self-kindness. So I notice I'm suffering, I realize I'm not alone in my suffering, and then I bring the remedy to myself. I bring that energy of kindness and compassion, which I know I can give to others. So I know it's inside. It's a resource within me that I can tap into. So I then give it to myself. So these are the three main components of self-compassion, and we'll bring them together in an exercise towards the end of this session so that you can really feel it and experience it for yourself. But this is the main message of today. If you want to remember anything, it's being mindful, having that balanced awareness, being able to go on that journey within, so I know what I'm feeling, realizing I'm not alone in my suffering, and that ability to bring that energy of kindness to my own experience. And this is important because it's in contrast to what we often normally do. So, in contrast to being mindful, in contrast to having that kind of spacious awareness of what's going on in my thoughts and feelings, I over identify with them. There's that sense of I am my thoughts and feelings, or this thought's going round and I can't stop it. It's got control over me. So this sense of over-identification leads to kind of rumination, and rumination is worry, isn't it? So we know when that thought's going round and round, it's not really achieving anything, it's not helping, but we just can't stop it. But if we learn to practice meditation and mindfulness and create a little bit of space, that will really help us to attend to our own suffering. Common humanity versus this feeling of isolation, which I've just spoken about, and self-kindness versus self-judgment. So that tendency to judge ourselves is very deep. And as I said, it might have come from messages when we were young. People say there's also a kind of evolutionary reason why we tend to judge ourselves, so we fit in more easily, so we don't allow our egos to run away with us, so that we are more alert to threats in the environment. We're keeping score of things. So there are multi-dimensional factors that mean that we have a tendency towards negativity. We could say we're Velcro for negativity and a bit like Teflon for positivity. So we need to kind of really tip the balance much more towards the positive, towards kindness. And we have to make a bit more effort to do that, to really build up this muscle of self-kindness, because it's been going too much the other way. And I'd like to explain this to you a little bit more in terms of our neuroendocrine system and the neurotransmitters in the brain. So this is a bit of an oversimplification, but it will help you understand more what's going on when you're in these different emotional regulation systems. So the red one is one that we're very familiar with, I think. It's the adrenaline system. It's the flight, fight, or fear system, or freeze rather system, the fear system. And this is our threat defense system. So it's either going to allow us to run away when we're in danger, or to protect ourselves by fighting if we need to. Or sometimes it's best just to be completely still and freeze and not move. So this is the emotional system that's triggering this response. And it's the kind of feelings we have in this system of fear, anger, anxiety, disgust. So we know it's important because it is protecting us. But the thing these days is that it's a bit over activated, I might say. Then we have the doing system, which is driven by dopamine. And this is motivational, pleasure-seeking neurotransmitter. So every time we complete a task or get something done, we get that little hit of dopamine. And so it helps us to get things done, and that's important. But it's also highly addictive. It's implicated in gambling. And what they're noticing now is the social media addiction, the addiction to our electronic devices, our phones, this checking messages all the time. We're getting a little hit of dopamine when we get a message, and so we're checking it all the time, and it's become highly addictive. And even in Silicon Valley now, they talk about going on a dopamine fast. So that's when you might have a retreat where you don't have your mobile phone or your computer or anything. You just give that part of your brain a rest. But, you know, when we're very involved in our day-to-day lives, we're often driven by all these things that we think we need to do. And that can also get a bit out of control, can't it? And it can lead to burnout. So what we're trying to do is really bring the balance back to this circle of feeling safe and contented. And this is the caring circle, the calm one, which is really mediated by dopamine, by oxytocin, and the endorphins. So these are the feel-good hormones when we're feeling relaxed and safe, and you know, we're doing things we enjoy. It's the mother-baby bonding hormone. So this is really promoting this sense of comfort, sense of safety, sense of soothing. So this system is important to understand, because I'd just like you to think about how much of your life do you think you spend in each of these circles. Obviously, we need to be able to protect ourselves from threat, but I would say a lot of the time in today's society, we're feeling a bit on edge, a bit anxious. You know, just that worry, that fear is in the background often. Is something bad going to happen? Am I going to be able to provide for my family? Am I going to have a good job? Am I going to do well in my exams? All these kind of things that can really make us feel just running on that adrenaline. Am I very busy? Am I just so busy I can't stop and smell the roses, as they say? Can I spend time with myself, with my family? Am I very much caught up in the dopamine system? And how much time do I spend in this calm, this contented, this relaxed system? And if you think about that for your own life just for a minute, are you in balance? Because I think in today's society, it often looks more like this for us. That a lot of the time we're feeling a little bit threatened, we're very busy, we're on that hamster wheel, getting all our things done. But just that feeling safe, feeling relaxed, feeling calm, in the flow, enjoying our lives. How much are we doing that? Might not be until right at the end of the day when you finally get to sit down and, just stop. And then you have that moment of relaxation. But it's important because when we're out of balance, when we're feeling anxious or we're just so busy, we're getting burnt out, it's very difficult for compassion to arise under these circumstances because they're competing emotional systems. So compassion really arises when we're in the green zone, when we're feeling safe. These are the conditions to allow compassion to arise. And another reason that we really want to trigger this care response more is because when we turn this threat response inwards, we get the effect of those neurotransmitters and hormones on our body, which leads to chronic stress, which leads to all kinds of illnesses. So when we have that stress response of fighting, and we turn that inwards, that becomes self-criticism. And it's very interesting, when they've done brain scans, they've noticed that the same part of the brain that lights up when you have an external threat lights up when you criticize yourself. So you are literally stressing yourself out when you talk to yourself in that way. So really we want to get the antidote to that. The remedy is to really give self-kindness to myself, not self-criticism. When I have that feeling of flight, I've got to get away from here, that leads us to isolation, to withdraw, to disengage, to feel lonely, disconnected. So to remember that we're all suffering, that connection is very important, that sense of how we're all part of this human family that helps us bring back the green zone, back into the care response. And again, that sense of freezing, when we turn that inwards, we ruminate, our thoughts go round and round and we can't stop them. And so this practice of meditation and mindfulness, that's really helping us to take that step back, take that journey within, be a little bit detached from our thoughts and feelings, and to be able to access that kindness and care within and give that energy to ourselves. And this is just an introduction to this topic today, but any of these practices, self-compassion practices and meditation and mindfulness practices, will activate this response. So they're worth practicing daily. And we can see in this slide, it's very busy, but it's really just emphasizing what I was saying, that when we react and we go into this autopilot stress reaction, it's activating this sympathetic nervous system. And so we've got increased cortisols and adrenaline and noradrenaline, and that's causing hyperarousal, acute hyperarousal, which increases my heart rate and my blood pressure and my inflammatory markers. So we get into this chronic stress state, which is increasing our pain, and all the kind of psychosomatic diseases we know about, anxiety, depression. It affects our immune function, can make asthma worse, irritable bowel. So it's really not helping us. It's really maladaptive coping and leads to burnout and breakdown. So what we're trying to do is shift over into this aware way of being, this compassionate, mindful response to my own suffering, and to pause, to stop, to really think what's going on here. And so this is where I feel calm and connected and I'm activating my parasympathetic nervous system, and this reduces the stress response, and therefore it's more hopeful, more positive. I feel more in control, and I'm doing healthy things to keep myself in balance. So I'm heading into the zone of well-being and resilience. So it's responding rather than reacting, and it has a direct effect on our body. And of course, these are, it's two-way traffic between our mind and our body. And often we're thinking about taking a tablet or something to help with these chemical pathways. But there are things that you do in your everyday life which can also activate these hormones. So, for serotonin, we know about serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Sometimes you need to take medication, but also things like walking, cycling, exercising, being in the sun, walking in nature. These are also increasing your serotonin levels. Oxytocin, so this really is the underpinning hormone of compassion. So we notice that playing with a baby, holding your own hand, holding hands with others, hugging is a big one, just appreciating, giving a compliment, this will increase your oxytocin. So endorphins, the feel-good hormones, the painkillers, laughter, real laughter has a strong effect on your pain threshold. So it's good to tell each other jokes and go to comedy clubs. This is very good for your pain. Dark chocolate, I was very happy to see that one. Again, exercising, and certain essential oils. And again, dopamine, there are healthy ways of triggering your dopamine. So it's important to be aware that we have some control over how these neurotransmitters, this hormonal system, this emotional regulation system is working in our bodies. And another aspect which is worth mentioning is this sense of the yin and yang of self-compassion. It's all very well, some people say, to be kind to yourself. Isn't that a bit wishy-washy? Isn't it a bit self-indulgent? Aren't you pitying yourself? And but their research has shown that people who are more self-compassionate actually have healthier habits and are more disciplined in the long run, because compassion always wants what's best for you. And balancing this kind of softer, soothing side of compassion is what we might call the yang side, or fierce compassion. And that's protecting, providing, and motivating. So being compassionate sometimes means setting a boundary. It means saying no. It means being strong and really protecting yourself. And that is part of compassion as well. But it's not in an angry, reacting way. It's a different kind of energy. It's more like a Shakti. It's more stable. It's more calm. And it comes from my own self-respect and need to protect myself. So it's helpful to know these two kinds of energies. And then the next thing that we're looking at, I think for a lot of us, we can talk about holistic health and mind, body, and spirit. And so we know that these neuro transmitters, these hormones, this neuroendocrine system is mediating a lot of our thoughts and feelings. But when we think about mind, body, and spirit, we need to think about who is experiencing these thoughts and feelings, who is witnessing these thoughts, who's the observer. And for me, it's a very deep practice of noticing that deeper than my brain, if you like, there's me, the experiencer. You could say it's me, the soul. And that part of me, the soul, is a deep nature of love, a deep nature of peace, a deep nature of happiness. And so when I'm expressing compassion, either to myself or to others, I'm actually expressing something that's really true to me, that it's expressing my true nature as a spiritual being of love. And so we're looking at it on all these different levels, mind, body, spirit, that it's important that compassion is an expression of my true self. And that's what makes it also very powerful and a worthwhile thing to be pursuing to practice. So what I'd like to do now, just towards the end of this session, is to take you on an exercise where you're going to learn how to soothe yourself when something has happened that's upset you. And it's a very nice practice because you can do it quite quickly. You can do it, you can learn it in a slow way, but actually when you're in the event, you can do it then and there. Because often the problem with some of the things is you think, well, after I'm out of this situation, I'll go have a hot bath, or I'll go for a long walk, or I'll do something after work, or, you know, it's always something in the future that's going to comfort you when you're having a rough time. But these practices are things you do in the moment. And they're very good to practice if you're about to get into an argument. I can tell you that from personal experience. So I'm going to just remind you, when you were with your friend or loved one who was suffering, how many of you gave that person a hug, or held their hand, or just stroked their arm? I'm sure a lot of you did, because that is one of the universal triggers of compassion. It's this soothing touch. And so we're going to use this soothing touch to really help soothe ourselves. Another thing, I'm sure when your friend or loved one was suffering, you didn't yell at them, you didn't raise your voice. I'm sure you spoke in a very gentle way, and there was love in your voice, and they picked that up. So this gentle vocalization is important, how we speak to ourselves. Physical warmth, you know, how many times do we say, let's have a coffee or a cup of tea, a hot drink, something that's going to, it creates that feeling of kindness. And smiling, just giving a smile actually triggers a feeling of compassion. Walking along the street, you see someone who looks a bit down, you just throw them a little smile, you know, and that can sometimes be enough. That's a connection. So we're going to use these triggers of compassion in this practice. And I'm going to start by asking you to just experiment a little bit with yourself about what soothing touch works for you. Okay, so we're going, and then we'll seamlessly run into an exercise called a self-compassion break. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to just again close your eyes, drop your shoulders, take a deep breath. And just begin by having your hands in your lap. And just holding your own hand. But I want you to hold your hand as if you are holding the hand of a good friend. And your hand is saying, I'm here for you, I support you. And then I'd like you just to try stroking your hand. See how that feels. Or stroking your arms. And just notice what feels comfortable for you, what feels soothing. And a very popular one is just putting one hand over your heart. And as you do that, just feeling that energy of love and kindness flowing from your hand to your heart. You may even put your other hand on top of that. And just again, the intention is giving kindness and love to yourself, soothing yourself, maybe even giving yourself a little hug. And then bringing your hands down into your lap. And sometimes just holding your hands in your lap, like supporting your belly, that can feel supportive. Or stroking your thighs, just your legs, that's soothing. And now I'd like you to bring to mind a situation in your life right now that's a little bit difficult. It might be causing you some stress, such as a health problem or a relationship problem or a work problem. Just a mild to moderate range problem, not a really big one, because we don't want to overstress ourselves while we're learning self-compassion. And as you bring this situation to mind, just notice if you feel a bit uneasy in your body anywhere. Do you have any tension? Do you feel this problem somewhere? And just make contact with that discomfort. Notice where you hold tension or pain in your body. And then just say to yourself slowly and kindly, this is a moment of suffering. You might have your own words for this. It might be, this feels uncomfortable, or I feel stressed, this hurts, it's painful. But it's acknowledging those feelings. It's acknowledging and validating the sense that you're going through something tough, even if it seems trivial and small. Find your own words, name it. And then saying to yourself, suffering is part of life. This is where we're not alone. This is common humanity. Others are just like me, and this is what it feels like when someone struggles in their life. And now putting your hands over your heart or wherever it feels soothing, just feeling the warmth and gentle touch of your hands and saying, may I be kind to myself. And this is self-kindness. Just feeling that intention, that warmth, that support from your hands. And whatever words work for you, maybe, may I be friendly towards myself. May I give myself the support that I need. May I love myself. Sometimes if it's hard to find the right words, imagine if you had a dear friend going through the same thing. What would you say to them? What words would come from your heart to their heart? And can you give this same message to yourself? Just taking a few deep breaths and soaking in that energy of kindness and love and compassion for yourself. And then slowly opening your eyes. So this little exercise, noticing your moment of suffering, realizing you're not alone, but then giving yourself the kindness that you need, is very, very useful. Simple practice, and you can do it very quickly, but it changes the energy of a situation, creates a space. It helps you respond rather than react. So it's a useful practice. And just to finish, just to say that a lot of this information is in a book that I've just published with my co-author Jan Alco. And we talk about 7 tools for coping with fear and uncertainty. And this is available on the Janki Foundation website and also the Brahma Kumari's Inspired Stillness website. And these 7 tools are creating that safe space inside, being present, loving myself, which we've talked about now, stepping back and accepting, empowering myself, connecting, discovering inner peace and wholeness. So this is also available as an ebook with audio tracks. So I think you might find this a helpful resource for some of the things we've been talking about today. We also have developed an app, a free app, which are antidotes to stressful situations, especially for health and social care professionals and caregivers. But I think most people would find this app really helpful. So again, we'd recommend that, and it's free. And then there are other resources from the Mindful Self-Compassion Network, and a lot of recordings that I have done are available free on SoundCloud if you would like to listen to my voice again, or even the self-compassion practice that's on SoundCloud. And I've sent a list of resources to Jabeen, and she can make it available to you if you would like them. So I think that's all I have to say, Jabeen. I don't know if we have much time left, but I'll leave that in your hands.
Thank you, sister. Thank you very much. That has been very, very helpful and inspirational. You have brought out a lot of points, but I would just like to go through a few of them just to highlight. What you said is compassion is to suffer. It comes from the meaning is to suffer. And what we need to do is we need to first attend to it, understand it, empathize, or we need to have self-response, and then helping, which is acting, which is appropriate action, like you said. But the first and foremost is need to attend to it. And thank you for sharing all those details that you did just now about the book and also about the SoundCloud recording, because that's exactly one of the questions that we have here is that where can we access to some meditation for self-compassion? So what I would like to say here is self-compassion involves acting the same way towards yourself when you are having a difficult time, fail, or notice something you don't like about yourself. Instead of just ignoring your pain with a stiff lip, we can take this time and talk to ourselves and say, how can I comfort myself and care for myself at this moment? Self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronted with personal failings. Is there anything you would like to add to that, maybe?
No, I think you've summarized it very nicely. Thank you, Jabeen. But I guess just to say, it's an ongoing journey. You know, I was, as you said in my introduction, have been studying Raj Yoga meditation for over 40 years. But I did find then learning the self-compassion practices on top of that really help me refine and see where I could be kinder to myself and understand it more deeply. So the two have gone together very nicely. And I think, but what I've also realized with the Raj Yoga meditation is that you also have access to kind of an ocean of compassion. There's a place you can go where you recharge. So that it has an extra dimension where that source of compassion is available to you. And that's also very, very helpful.
The next question we have is this the right time due to this coronavirus for us to be compassionate to others?
Well, I think most definitely. I think the coronavirus has put us very much all in the same boat together. It hasn't distinguished, it affects everyone, every country. And so that sense of how do we respond to our fellow human beings when they're going through such a tough time? And the people who've responded with compassion, I think, are the ones that have really connected with those who have had coronavirus or have lost someone to coronavirus, or all the economic implications of what shutting down all these countries has had. I think there's going to be a huge need for compassion because people are suffering, and the consequences of this means that people are going to continue to suffer.
One more question, sister, is high self-esteem better or self-compassion? What would make you more successful, self-compassion or self-esteem?
Well, Kristen Neff herself talks about self-esteem, and her understand. I suppose it depends what your definition is. I think I prefer self-respect, but because self-esteem is regarded as a social ranking system, so often with self-esteem, you're placing yourself below others or above others. So there is that sense of comparison, whereas compassion does not do that. You're not comparing yourself to anyone else with compassion. So there's a feeling that compassionate energy is much more universal. It's more healing. It's more energizing. Self-esteem is you could get into compare and some competition. Self-respect, on the other hand, is something about really understanding who you are, your strengths, and your weaknesses, how you're working on yourself, what your deep inner qualities are. So self-respect, I think, is important, but self-compassion is a more universal feeling, and so I prefer self-compassion to self-esteem.
Thank you once again, sister. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions or you would like to hear more from Sister Sarah, as she said, she has sent me all the links. So kindly get in touch with me and I can forward them to you. And we have our next program will be on coming Saturday, the 13th of March at 4 p.m. Jakarta. I've dropped my number on the chat box, so kindly get in touch with me so I can update you with the details. Thank you once again. Have a nice weekend and stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jabeen. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.